Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 119. We're set for another epic showdown as England's standings are initially in the hands of Wales and Ireland before turning to the Scots for a potential SixNations championship decider. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hi guys, welcome back. Huge weekend, probably the biggest weekend in the rugby calendar is this, the final weekend of the Six Nations, apart from obviously the World Cup. And obviously to discuss it, as always, I'm joined by Dan. Hi mate.
I was super confident, but I've read too much. That's the problem. A lot of the pundits are backing Wales to beat Ireland, dickheads.
No, can't see it.
But, mate, massive day. Like you said in the last pod, actually it's out of our hands. We just got to go and do a job on Scotland, and then what will be, will be.
100%. And look, Eddie Jones has said, we want to be number one in the world, but we're not there yet. But a strong performance today, regardless of what happens elsewhere, can still kind of shine a light on England and show them to be the number one team in the Six Nations. And I know that they lost to Wales, and if Wales win today, they've done a Grand Slam. But you've got to look at performances. And bottom line is England have performed better throughout the Six Nations than Wales, barring that one game. So he's right. A strong performance today, regardless of what the table looks like. England will, I think, have put down a marker, if they haven't already.
I think England have showed themselves to be a world-class team, a team capable of winning the World Cup. Which we knew all along anyway, my friend.
We've been known it for some time. It's why we're doing this. Well, look, before we get stuck into this, because there's plenty to talk about, and there's two games that we really need to cover today. Couple of reviews and messages and things. So the first one is an email from our friend David Stockwell. You'll recall he messaged us. He was the one with the Scottish fiancée.
And the very articulate message. I do remember him.
He has said, "Afternoon, gents. Currently listening to the latest pod while on my lunch break. A few pods ago, you asked for suggestions on what sort of things you should talk about between the end of the Six Nations and the start of the World Cup. How about some features on the teams within our pool? How they tend to play, what their strengths are, who their key players are, and how England should approach the game, etc. Could then lean on to likely opponents we'd face in the next round and in the knockout stages. These are the kinds of conversations I'd now like to be involved in and listen to from your rose-tinted perspectives. Obviously, we know a lot about the French team, but many of us will be less familiar with some of the others. Last year, I spent 6 months from Georgia to Maine, go me, and while in New Jersey, watched the USA v Scotland on the telly. America won 30 points to 29, and then number 2 and number 10 both looked seriously good. It would be easy to scan down our World Cup pool and not give much thought to American rugby prowess. They're presumably NFL rejects, and they're not that bad. Best Dave. And he actually then quickly followed it up with a sort of, an NB. I should have said, thanks for including my last email on the show. I told the Scottish fiancée I mentioned, for any future reference, her name is Sean, all about it, to which he replied, it's great you have someone else to talk your England shite to.
Oh, Sean, that was a bit below the belt. Firstly, did I hear that right? He walked from Georgia to Maine?
Yeah.
Wow, mate, good for you, man. Like that, I assume that would probably be a charity thing, so great work.
I mean, as opposed to just getting a bit of fitness in the weekend.
As opposed to Forrest Gumping it. But
it certainly sounds that way, doesn't it? So yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would find it very interesting myself to kind of look into who we're going to be playing and what sort of challenges we're going to face, particularly in the group stages. And I think as well, Eddie's shown us that England have a number of different options, both tactically but also in terms of selection. I think it would be interesting to kind of take a look at those games and work out, where do we think a Cokanasiga is going to slot in as opposed to a Null, for example. If we obviously assuming that Joe is going to get the call up to be part of the World Cup squad, which I think we probably are. So yeah, great idea.
I think it's a good idea. The team that's most interesting for me is the USA because I know it's a different game, but on the Sevens circuit, they're absolutely bossing it.
Well, and as David just said, it's they're a probably underrated team at the moment, but they've got such a pool to pick from, and let's be honest, a lot of these NFL rejects, if that's the right terminology to use, They're
NFL
still
are rugby rejects.
Quality sportsmen. They are, exactly. I think we've said it before about USA Rugby. They're probably not quite there yet in terms of competing at the World Cups, and we'll see if that changes this year because they're definitely improving all the time. But it's not going to be long, is it?
No, not at all. I think they're focused a lot on the sevens because I think that's sort of probably suits their culture a bit more. It's a bit more, let's just say, Americanized. It's a bit more sort of almost, TV. Like you look at their sports and it's all about like the show and everything. And it's not necessarily about the sort of the scrum and the dark arts within rucks and mauls. No. So,
but they have, what they need to work on is that ability to last at least 60 to 80 minutes. They've got some guys who are ridiculously big, who can run ridiculously fast, but they can do it in little sort of 2 to 5 minute bursts. If they can start to produce those kinds of athletes and have them, keep it going for the full 60 to 80 minutes, they're going to have the ability to create teams that are going to be very dangerous. Of course, the biggest problem is that if they do that, is that the draw, because they've also got to get the money in the game. The draw is going to be from other nations for their sort of domestic rugby. Whether or not they would have a rule that said, if you want to play for America, for the USA, you've got to play in the USA like a lot of other nations do. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, they're definitely one to watch. And as I say, I don't think it's going to be long before we start seeing them genuinely competing at the top. Watch this space.
And David, good luck today, mate. This evening could be a massive argument.
I think Sean knows what's coming.
Oh, definitely.
Let's be honest. Next up we've got a review on. I think this is another one where the review has been rewritten, but the 5 stars have remained. It's from Budgie Jointed. I recognise the name. He says 5 stars again. Love the pod. It's on the must-listen list every week. I've got an idea for a pod episode. Oh, another one. Picking the England and Barbars team for the game later on this year would be interesting to hear who you guys see as an up-and-coming 23, considering most of the World Cup squad won't be anywhere near this game. I will personally be at the game, as will I, and would like to see a mix of youth and outcasted players such as Haskell and Sips. Building a Barbars team to compete against would be interesting, considering most players will be with their respective countries. I've had a pop at it, and it wasn't easy. Would be interesting to hear your take. Also, I was right about Geng.
We don't talk about Barbars. So to all our listeners, let me let you know about Barbars. We have a Judas in our ranks, and he had a spare ticket and decided to take his wife over me. So, read into that what you must. But
oh no, I can make that really easy for you, mate. I thought, I've got the spare ticket, shall I take Dan? And decided no.
Wow, that's just, I'm not going to lie, that stings.
It's a little hurtful.
But do you know what? That's a great idea.
What, taking the wife to Twickenham?
Yeah, I hope she sits there and just actually, Lucy's becoming quite knowledgeable now, isn't she?
She's starting to pick up on it a little bit.
Oh, that's annoying.
It does save me having to explain everything, though. Yeah. It does save me having to explain everything, though, which is nice. But it's frustrating when she's giving me tactical advice on what England should be doing, and then I repeat it on the pod.
And it's the best. It's the best, insight
best content.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think that's a great idea. Interestingly, I can't remember whether we said it in the pod or whether we just were talking about it in the week. We were saying we thought we probably would see a World Cup squad, or certainly a good chunk of World Cup squad involved in that game, because it would be seen as another kind of practice game, if you like.
So I don't think we will, because there's still 4 more games. So I think that will be. I think there might be the odd fringe player involved.
Yeah.
But I don't think there'll be any of the big names involved. I don't think there'll be the Farrells, the Napoleons.
To be honest, my head is saying good, but my heart, because I'm going to be there as well,
is saying,
damn it. Great idea, and we will definitely do that. That'll be one of the ones we do. In fact, that's the summer, isn't it? It's June, the 2nd of June, I think. So, we've got a little bit of time. We'll definitely slot that one in too. So, some great ideas there. And if any of you got any other ideas, keep them coming. And Budgie, I don't know what your real name is, so we'll call you Budgie. If you said you put together a team yourself, and chuck it over on an email, englandrugbypod@gmail.com, so we can take a look and compare it to what we come up with.
I'd love to see that.
it'd be interesting to see what you've come up with. So appreciate that. And then finally on Twitter, where's my phone? We had a message from Tristan Peck, who I don't know if he has. I don't know if he's reviewed us before, but he's certainly been, he's been in touch on Twitter before. And he says, if I can find it, which I clearly can't. Here it is. He says, from listening to the Hask on House of Rugby, I know the English lads are keen to redeem themselves after Murrayfield last year. I expect a multi-pack of whoop-ass to be open on the Scots today. Cracking pod as always, lads, and great to hear Dan on decent audio.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's So, firstly, guys, thanks very much for all those reviews. They're awesome, and I like having them. Tristan, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think there's going to be some. I think the likes of Jamie George. Just listening to I was chatting to Andy the other day and saying, listening to the BBC podcast with Hugo Monyer and Danny Kerr, and they had, I believe it was Ryan Wilson who started the trouble. He was on there. You could see Danny Kerr just did not like him. He was just like, yeah, well done, you pushed the smallest guy. And I think he offered him out as well, like half jokingly, but there was certainly some bite to it. So I am expecting a bit of niggle today. And
pushy McShovey.
Yeah, a bit of pushy McShovey. And I think...
What I would like, I want to see some massive hits, 100% legal. Maybe if Farrell wants to drop in a couple of those cheeky on the fringe ones, that's okay too. But yeah, I want it to be one of those where England just put in, a kind of pristine performance, but also abuse Scotland in the process in terms of massive hits, constantly turning them over, just take them apart professionally.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. Of course, I don't want to see any Scottish player get injured, but I do want to see them get hurt.
Yeah. You have to. I mean, look, this is what rugby rivalries, sporting rivalries are all about, isn't it? And last year they beat us. It was against the run of not playing the game necessarily, but against the run of how teams have been performing. It was unexpected. It was a bit of a shock loss for England. We were hurt, and they were rubbing salt in the wounds. And then obviously to kind of add an insult to injury. And I absolutely by no means suggest that it is the hardcore rugby fans or anything to do with the team. But you obviously had that incident with Eddie at the station with those morons that decided to kind of abuse him personally, which just again it overshadows the match. And I think there's been a lot of talk this week about how Eddie Jones should concentrate on the game and not bring up all this other stuff. But I think the complete opposite. His team is going to be. They would have been wound up at the time. I'd have been wound up if it was my coach. And they're going to want payback for that. And I think he absolutely hit the nail on the head when he decided to just make sure that no one had forgotten.
So does your brother Harry, does he listen to this pod?
I mean, he probably lies and says that he does.
So I'm going to, like you were saying, you hit the nail on the head saying that's what rugby's all about on the pitch. And Harry, if you're listening, I'm about to ruin you. I remember when you guys were playing against each other and you bounced him.
Yeah.
And that's what rugby's about. You and your brother just wanted to hurt each other and you sat him down and Harry just looked like a little girl at Scout Guide or whatever. But it's on the pitch. But I'm with you, mate. I don't think Eddie's done anything wrong. There was an article today saying how Eddie was mocking the Scots. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Everything.
Did you see what it was though? That all that happened was someone said the last time Scotland beat England at Twickenham was in 1983, and he went 1883. Oh, 1983. That's the extent of the mocking the Scots, and suddenly it's got headlines.
It's just taken, and that's Eddie. It's just taken out of context, and it's used to, because when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, Eddie, don't give them ammunition. Then I read it, I was like, oh, he's done nothing. Like, it's ridiculous. But no, but if that motivates him, great. As long as it doesn't become, as long as it doesn't become a sort of incident, which I don't for a second believe it will, but as long as it doesn't become one of those where you just see England just wanting to hurt them.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're guys, the ball's out of play. What are you doing? And Danny Grucock comes on and starts
Headbutting.
Headbutting and like Mr. Miyagi and everyone.
Exactly. This is a good place. I think we'll come back to the England game at the end of this section, but we need to talk about the first game up, which is, it's the second game up. There's one going on at the moment, but the first important one for us, because of course Ireland need to win. That's the bottom line for us. And you were saying about Eddie, didn't really say anything at all. On the other hand, he has wound up Warren Gatland this week. Because he has come out and said Ireland are peaking whilst Wales are tiring, and Gatland's response is, "What the hell is Eddie Jones doing talking about our game? My advice to him is to concentrate on the Scotland match." He's trying to get under your skin because he wants Ireland to win for obvious reasons, and it sounds like he's done it. Like it sounds like he's achieved exactly what he set out to achieve. So thank you, Warren. Warren Gatland responded by saying that no one apparently is training as hard as Wales. I'm not sure where that's coming from. If you're only concentrating on yourselves, then how do you possibly know what everyone else is doing? But hey, he's got under his skin, hasn't he? And I think they have a bit of a love-hate relationship anyway, Eddie and Warren. There was talk about after the Wales game, certainly they were planning to meet for a drink. Whether it actually happened or not, I don't know.
If I was Eddie, I would have literally put laxatives in every one of Gatland's drinks. And then just when he's starting to go, put Imodium in, play a game of Laxiamodi. So
he did.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's all sort of for the press. Eddie knows exactly what he's doing. He's not. Anybody who says he's been disrespectful is just being overly sensitive.
Media these days, the media games, if that's what you want to call it, it's kind of become part of the game. I mean, just look at the whole roof open, roof closed issue. Every single home game that Wales have, the media makes a big thing about how the opposition wants the roof to be open and Wales wants the roof to be closed. Bottom line is, you've said that it has to be unanimous. And therefore, the opposition is going to... You've kind of gone, it has to be unanimous and we always want it closed. So you've given the choice to the away side. I personally think that's the right call, because this week there's been a lot of chat about how Wales are saying, Warren Gatland said we've got a responsibility to the game of rugby to make sure that a decent standard is played. And because there's weather warnings in Wales and it's going to be very windy, it's going to be very wet. They're saying that, with the roof open, it's going to make for a less entertaining game. Let's be honest. Wales don't care about the weather. They don't care whether they're playing in the rain or not. What they care about is whether or not they can create a cauldron for the noise, which is already phenomenal, for a game at Millennium at Principality. But it can be made even more so by having the roof closed. And Ireland rightly are saying, no, we don't want to give you any more advantage than you've already got. We'll have it open, please. And, there's so much chat about how, they're trying to imply that Ireland are being, difficult and it's going to make the game less interesting because it's going to be so wet. I mean, Wales went behind Ireland's back despite Ireland wanting it open and tried to get the kind of SixNations powers that be to overrule it because of the weather. It's like, this is an outdoor sport.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Your players play week in, week out, outdoors. Every other nation plays outdoors. The only possible reason for wanting the roof shut is to get that home advantage made more intense, if you like.
Yeah, that extra 1% or something, which at that level does count. So, yeah, I mean...
100%. But that's why Ireland are 100% right and justified in saying, no, you've given us the choice. We're going to make it... we're not going to make it easier. And also, Joe Schmidt has said, whether or not there's any truth in it, but 2 years ago, Ireland said to Wales, you decide, and the roof was closed, and when they turned up, the pitch was soaking wet. They'd overwatered it. So, it's a very good point. So Wales have a massive advantage beyond just the noise if the roof gets closed, because the teams training to play against them are training for dry weather or the assumption of certain conditions. Wales know exactly what conditions they're going to create on the pitch.
But so does everyone at home. I mean, that's not unique to Wales.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that if it's pissing with rain outside, the pitch is going to be wet. if it's pissing with rain outside,
understand the concept of water. Yeah.
I do. If it's pissing with rain outside and the roof's shut, you could rightly assume that you're doing it, particularly in this scenario, you're doing it to make sure the pitch isn't wet, so you get a nice, quick running game of rugby, right? So if you rock up and the pitch is soaking wet, is that not Wales getting an unfair advantage?
So I actually think Wales might even play. I think a running game with some of Ireland's backs that makes them more dangerous.
But this is where I think this issue comes into play. Are Ireland saying, look, we're not going to give them the option of shutting the roof, prepare for a running game, turn up and they've waterlogged the pitch again. So we end up having to play the same kind of slower kind of wet weather game, but with the roof shut where they also have the advantage of the extra noise. And I think you're right. I think it suits Wales' game style at the moment. That kind of it's slow, wear the opposition down, slow the ball down. You know, they haven't really been doing much running with the ball out wide in this championship, and I don't see them suddenly changing that now. So, despite all of that, I actually think it might be to their advantage to have the roof open in terms of what happens on the pitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, they obviously wanted that advantage of the noise that can be created by having it closed, and they're not going to get it again. So
is there a part of you that's worried that Wales might do Ireland?
No.
Good.
We're going to do a little segment. So we always do our little sort of 5-10 minute half time spot. We're going to do a little 5-10 minute pre-match spot post Wales Ireland, because I think it's obviously important for us to cover what happened in that game before looking at what's going to happen in the England-Scotland game, and obviously we'll do some predictions at the end of this for what we think is going to happen in that match. But yeah, I think Eddie Jones is exactly right. I think Ireland are peaking and Wales are tiring, and I said it in the last few episodes. To me, watching those games live, whatever, I don't understand where all of this hype is coming from about how great Wales have been. I personally think they've been really poor in this Six Nations. And in fact, the only game that they actually have kind of won, really, was the England game. Through that moment right at the end where they were coming from behind. I mean, I know they were behind against France, but France just gift wrapped them 2 tries and said, "There you go. We won't defend. We'll just."
I mean, they won against Italy.
I don't. They
weren't great, but they.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. That's probably just a really weird way of putting it, but I don't know. None of the matches have felt like they've really kind of put in a performance. They haven't kind of gone out there, and they've relied very heavily on capitalising on really obvious mistakes. And I know some people will say, "Well, hang on, England do the same thing. They create opportunities by forcing errors." But I'm not talking about Wales forcing errors. I'm talking about oppositions just making errors that are unexpected, and Wales just reacting to them in kind of the spur of the moment. And that's kind of how they've.
Defensively, they've been brilliant.
They've been strong defensively.
They don't seem to have offered much. To beat Ireland today will have to be an absolute gargantuan defensive effort that they still have it in them. Maybe they do. And
they probably do fitness-wise. They'll probably put up a good defence, but I think the winner today is going to be the one that can produce the attacking performance.
Yeah, I agree.
Despite the weather. I don't know. It's hard to call, and obviously my heart is with England, so we want Ireland to do it, and we're always going to lean that way. I do think Ireland are going to do it. I think interesting stats, if we like, as we like this. Wales' last defeat was to Ireland prior to their 13-game win streak that they're currently on. Ireland, as we know, are they've notoriously halted both New Zealand and England's win streaks.
Party poopers, I believe it's called.
Exactly. For me, it feels right. I was watching some of the under-20s last night, and obviously Ireland, congratulations on the Grand Slam. But I think in the first half, for a good chunk of the first half at least, Wales were ahead. And I was thinking, in some ways, I'd quite like Wales under-20s to beat Ireland and deny them the Grand Slam. Because it would almost be like that extra kind of like, right, you denied us a Grand Slam, now the men are going to deny you a Grand Slam. But they didn't do that, so we have to come up with another one. But yeah, right. I feel like Ireland are going to do it, and I feel like Wales. We talk sometimes about teams have got one big game in them.
Yeah,
I feel like Wales have got one game where they're going to get properly shown up in them, and
where they're going to get beaten like a ginger stepchild.
If you like.
I believe is a wrong saying. Right. Okay. So let's move on. Let's move on to the main event.
The main event.
England, Scotland. Joe Cognisinger, or Cognisinger, however you say it, left out. Thoughts?
We talked about this in the week, and when I first read it, my initial reaction was, what the fuck? You know, how can you take a guy who's just put in not just a man of the match performance, but like just the impact that he had on the game, and just drop him from the 23 altogether? Since then, we kind of looked at a few different aspects of this decision, and I think a big part of it, we know that Scotland are missing their back three. Massive for them. And I think that England are probably thinking the obvious tactic here is the kicking game, at least to see if it's on. You know, you've got an inexperienced back three. You've got Teo has moved to the bench, so Slade's back in. So you've got that kind of wider kicking option in Slade as well. That to me means that you're drawing in defenders. And potentially creating those gaps behind the wingers, that Slade can also put boot to ball, and on that basis, I think you probably do have to go. Well, May and Noel are likely to be more effective in the kick chase than Cokanasiga, who's a bit more of a bulldozer. Not that he isn't also lightning quick, but there's a lot of him to have to skin a man, pick up a ball on the fly and race away, whereas Noel and May, a bit more slight, perhaps suits them a little bit better. So I think that might be a big part of it. I think it might be a very much a tactical, well, I'm pretty sure it is a tactical move rather than quality. I would have liked to have seen Cokanasiga on the bench instead of Teo, because I think that he does offer something a little bit more interesting if England need to change it up and if the Scottish back three are coping with that strategy.
So, yeah, I agree. I think same as you thought, I actually think it's a smart decision. I think defensively, my only concern, and I don't think this has happened, is we don't become over-reliant on the kicking game like we tried to do against Wales.
Oh, 100%. They need to have that plan B ready to rock and roll. And it's the same team that faced Ireland.
But that's why I don't mind Tia on the bench, because I think that actually shows an intention to
mix it up,
put some heavy traffic up the middle, and then draw in the players so we can get it wide and run it a bit more. So overall, I get it. I have full faith in Eddie. We trust.
Indeed, we do.
And I actually think it's a good team. I think England. I hope we show that we've learned from the Wales game. I hope we mix up our attacking points, like you say. I hope there are the kicks behind, but I hope there's the running.
They need a complete game. They need a bit of everything. I want to see them kick behind and then crash it up, and then kick behind and crash it up, and just keep Scotland guessing for 80 minutes and just completely overwhelm them. Put in some of those massive smashes that we talked about. Maybe a couple of little cheeky comments. There you go, lads. That's what happens. George Ford comes on for the last 20 and just smashes some people. Not that that's ever happened before, but maybe today will be the day.
That may be we may be moving into realms of unlikely here, but
realms of impossibility.
But it's a massive game. I can't wait for this game. I mean, I said to you in a week, I'm happy not to watch the France-Italy match. I'm recording it because I want my energy levels to still be so high for the England game.
Two. Yeah, and obviously the Wales game is vital as well. So that has to we need 160 minutes of high energy.
Oh yeah, I mean I almost bought some Guinness just so I could support the Irish, but I mean I didn't in the end because
I did a shot of Jameson.
I did too.
You're a dick.
Thanks.
Let's move to the forwards. Hughes and Shields on the bench.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned this, didn't we? I think if one of the other awesome foursomes were there, we wouldn't see that. I think I get it. I do get it. I think he's gone for, look, let's not leave anything up to chance. Let's not have any unknowns, which perhaps a Yules or a Stoke might be.
I mean, one of them is going to be a second row replacement, surely, because I can't see him taking off two of Billy Tom, and
Mark.
That's the one. Obviously, that's Vunipola, Curry, and Wilson. Those three have been consistently our top three in the back row, and assuming that he uses all his finishes, at least one of them, if not potentially two, could be getting replaced. Now, obviously, the injuries, touch wood, we don't see, but that would change things. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether I would have gone for perhaps even an extra back. Maybe had a Cokanasiga in there too on the bench and just had the one of them
play at 8.
Well, we know he can exactly. So yeah, I don't know. Actually, just quickly on that was mentioned a little bit on social media. We touched on it briefly, and I maintain what I said at the time. But just your thoughts when he moved to 8. Do you think the intention was for Billy to crash the ball up?
I think so.
See, I don't. I think that the whole point of that was to make the opposition go, well, they're clearly going to now smash Billy up the middle, which we already know Joe Cokanasiga could have done, and he could have done that.
Yeah, but I think.
Do you not think Billy was a decoy?
No.
That's why there was that whole little kind of weird stutter thing where he did get the ball, but it kind of looked like he wasn't supposed to, and he didn't. He therefore took it standing still. And
no, I think it was almost hey boys, have you enjoyed having Tio and Tuilagi run at you? Here, have some more fun. Have Big Billy.
Well, I think they should contemplate doing that again, but having him as a decoy. Maybe do it 3 times in a match, and the third time as a decoy.
What they should do when Joe Ford comes on, have Billy and Manu Tuilagi run the lines, and then have Joe Ford do the crash ball.
Who's Joe Ford?
George Ford, even.
Oh, okay.
It's his brother. But either one, bring him in as well. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Have George Ford on the crash ball.
Nice. Okay, so the few last little bits. One, just again, your thoughts on this. On Twitter, lots of people talking about Cokanasiga after the Italy game and describing him as the next Lomu. There'll obviously never be another Lomu, but the next closest thing. His sister on Twitter has pleaded for people to stop referring to him as the next Jonah. She says he's not Jonah Lomu, he's just Joe. Is it not the biggest compliment in rugby to be told you're the next Jonah Lomu?
In my mind, Jonah Lomu is the biggest icon of rugby. Jonah Lomu changed the game like no one else ever has. Yeah, but I think...
I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to either Joe or his sister, and I see what she's doing there.
But I think she might be saying, "Oh, please don't put that on him."
Maybe I think he'd embrace it.
Oh yeah, if you're compared to Lomu, you're doing something right. Lomu is an absolute miracle of a man. Oh, it was an absolute miracle of a man. May he rest in peace. And he was just, to rugby, he was just unbelievable. And
special man.
I understand the comparisons. I don't think when people are, the thing is this can be blown out of proportion. People are like, oh, there was a hint of Lomu to him, and everyone says he's the next Lomu. Like, no one's actually said, I think he's going to be as good as Lomu was.
I think he's going to be better.
That's huge. I think people are saying I can see a touch
Lomu-esque similarities.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're taking that, aren't you, all day long?
Oh God, yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like when you're out in a nightclub and someone goes, "This guy's a bit Hefner-esque." You're like, "Oh my God, I'm a hero."
I mean, that's never ever happened to you.
But, I said it to myself a few times, and then
whilst looking in the mirror.
And then the girls look at me and like, "Stop staring at me." Sorry.
Oh dear. Look, on that note, let us move on to just before we'll go through the team before we kind of head off to watch the Wales Ireland game, and we'll do some predictions. But just a kind of a shout out and thoughts and all that to Dan Robson. So we know he was out because he'd been sick. It turns out he's got blood clots. Now, I'm not a doctor, despite what I may have told certain people in my first year at uni. I think it's quite serious, and at the moment they're not committing to when he'll be back, and he may well be out for the World Cup.
Well, Dan Robson, our thoughts are with you, brother. I hope everything goes well and gets healed, and we're behind you, mate.
Absolutely, and obviously, not wanting to be insensitive, but do we think that if he doesn't make it back for the World Cup, Danny Kerr is next in line? I know he's currently injured, which is why he's not involved today. But do we think that he's
He is in my
obvious
head, but
replacement.
I don't know. Eddie tends to have a thing where when he sort of changes his mind about someone, it becomes very hard for them to come back. I would imagine
The fact that Danny
so.
Care's played quite a big role though throughout Eddie's reign.
Yeah,
I feel like
I
it's
think
not like
he might
he's
be.
not like a Danny Cipriani who Eddie's just clearly never liked, or or Don Armand or something. He's been in there or thereabouts for a long time, and Eddie kind of sends him away saying, "You need to work on this, you need to work on that." I think this might be Danny's opportunity to restate his claim.
Yeah, I think so. In
But
my head, Danny Cipriani's next, but
all
either
that
way,
said, obviously we don't yet know, and hopefully Dan Robson is fit and healthy, and in time for the World Cup, and it's a shootout between them, because that's obviously what we want. We want that pressure on, and obviously we want him fit and healthy. So yeah, hopefully swift, healthy recovery for you, please, Dan. As Dan says, our thoughts are with you and your family. And yeah, hopefully you come back and put pressure on that shirt.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the team is no major surprise, but we just so you can hear it, Dan, in words: Sinclair, George, Moon, Launchbury, Cruz, Wilson, Curry, Vunipola, Youngs, Farrell, Tuilagi, Slade in the centres, May, Noel, Daly at the back, with Cole, Cowan, Dickey, and Genge coming on to replace the front row. Hughes and Shields covering the back five, and Spencer, Ford, and Teo covering the backs.
The hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. That is not only a Six Nations winning team, that is a World Cup winning team. Boys, come on. I know you're going to do it today. Go out there, make us proud as you always do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And regardless of what happens in the Wales-Ireland game, just go out and put in a performance. Show the world that that Wales blip, is not important. This is the team that you need to be worried about facing, and get some revenge for last year, please. So predictions, Dan. We'll start. I'll tell you what. We'll do our England-Scotland predictions.
And after the Wales Ireland,
yes, we'll do them after exactly when we know exactly what's on the line. But for Wales Ireland, and I've gone big. By the way, unlike me,
I'm going Ireland 22, Wales.
Scores.
I'm going scores for this one. I went for the England game. Ireland 22, Wales 15.
15. Fine. Oh, I've gone Ireland by 12.
Wow.
You've gone them by 7. Do I need to put in a score? I'm not going to. There you go. That's how we're rolling today. You're going
Fair
scores.
Enough.
I'm going.
Fair enough. Yeah, we don't
difference.
normally do scores, but today
You're feeling it.
I'm feeling it. I'm
Fair
feeling
enough.
that love.
Yeah, Ireland by 12, and you're saying by 7.
Yeah.
But I like that we're both thinking Ireland. Not ironically at all. With England Rugby Pod, I put out a poll asking what people thought, and about 70% think Ireland are going to win, despite apparently the rest of the rugby world thinking Wales are going to win.
Well, a lot of the pundits are backing Wales. I understand why. I do get it to a point, but I think it's Ireland's day. Top of the morning to you. Come on, lads. What the hell accent was that?
Yeah, please don't ever do accents again.
Yeah.
On that horrible note, guys, we're going to leave you. I'm not sure what with yet. Maybe nothing. But we will be back before the start of the first half of the England game to let you know what happened in the Wales-Ireland match, and a quick kind of 5 minutes to discuss how we think that will impact the England-Scotland game. And at that point, we will do predictions for the Calcutta Cup clash. Catch you then.
There's 35 seconds to go. This is the one. It's coming back for Johnny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. Yes! It's up. It's over. He's done it. Johnny Wilkinson is England's hero yet again. And there's no time for Australia to come back. England have just won the World Cup.
Dan, I'm not sure which one of us it was that said Wales by 18.
Was that me?
Wow.
Do you know what? Ireland should have had the roof closed.
They definitely should have done. First of all, credit to Wales for everything that we've said about them over the Six Nations, and I'm not taking any of that back. Today, they were good. Their defence was fantastic. Ireland still made an obscene number of unforced errors, the operative word being unforced, which perhaps makes it harder to see exactly how good that Welsh performance was. But they had it all to play for, and they just Ireland just looked like a second-rate team. They just every single time they looked like they might be a threat. Wales just snubbed it out and put them back under pressure.
I think Wales were brilliant, and quite frankly, they did on that performance. They did deserve that Grand Slam.
Yeah. I mean that's the bottom line for me. That take away, forget about everything else for a minute. They were on for a Grand Slam, so they needed to do a job today to win a Grand Slam, and they did that incredibly well. And fair play. For me, it doesn't change the fact that they were gifted a lot of results that enabled them to be playing for a Grand Slam today. But that is the way rugby went. That's the way sport goes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's they said, and I hate the fact I'm about to say this. That's the thing. Wales don't know how to lose. I'm starting to think there might be some truth to that. Like, what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, just because it wouldn't be the England Rugby pod if we didn't say something negative about Wales, and obviously after today, that's hard to do. So, how about this? So, I got a tweet, or I saw a tweet from someone else showing the current world rankings as they now stand. Now, I'm assuming this is still the case, and that try at the end there from Ireland, because for those of you that may not know, Wales won 25-7, Ireland scoring after the 80 minutes, like literally in the death. But assuming that doesn't change anything and the world rankings are, as this tweet suggested, Ireland are now number 2 in the world. Sorry, Wales. Wales are now number 2 in the world. And to me, looking at the top 10, it doesn't feel like Wales are the second most dangerous side that you might come up against.
I would, if we had to play the World Cup final next weekend, I would rather play Wales than Ireland.
Yeah, me too. I'd rather play Wales than South Africa.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, it's tough, but well done, Wales. Deserve. It's a shame.
Yeah, I needed to get a dig in. Come on, it's the England Rugby pod. Yeah, Wales are the ultimate enemy, and so we needed some sort of dig, and that's hard to find on a day like today because, as you say, credit where it's due.
Yeah, it's tough. And in some ways, it does put a bit of a dampener on this match. But in other ways, not really. England, this is actually quite a good test for England. They still need to now go out and put in a performance. Oh, yeah. And they need to, they really need to stand up. And I'm sure they will.
Everything is kind of different now. So had that been a close game, as it was expected to be, it would almost feel different coming into the England game because it was so, apparent early on that was the way the game was heading. It's been a bit of an anticlimax, and so it kind of doesn't feel like a final weekend. It just feels like another Six Nations game, and I think we go into this the way we got into every game, and I think a strong performance and focusing on revenge for last year, and England come away from the Six Nations in a really strong position. Let themselves down today, and they've had 2 poor performances and 3 good performances, and it leaves a lot of question marks. So today is all about just saying, forget the Wales result. It's all about saying, this is a team that's wants to be number 1 in the world and genuinely believes it can be and is good enough to be. They're clearly not going to get there between now and the World Cup, but that's irrelevant. The key kind of marker for the best team in the world is who lifts the trophy at the end, and that's what we're obviously here to follow.
Yes, it is. Now let's get to the England game, because we'll want to obviously watch as much of build up as we can. Have a minimal prediction.
I am saying England by 28.
Oh, bloody hell!
Yeah,
I'm saying England by 12.
England, but you're not going to score this time.
No, I'm not going. No, I wasn't that close last time. So no. Mouse actually messaged me saying, "What do you reckon with Scorbies to put a bet on?" I said 22-15 Ireland, and he texted me at half time saying, "Good prediction, dickhead."
Yeah, we don't do predictions so that people can make money. Yeah, so it's been a weird day already. Italy absolutely all over France, but didn't manage to do the job. Expectation of a close game, and Wales absolutely trounce Ireland, who are supposedly number 2 in the world, and England expected to cause all sorts of problems for Scotland. I think England will. I genuinely think they've shown class across the board in a way that I feel like that they've had their upset, and it was against Wales, and so I expect them to go in and do a job, and just more of the same. But you just don't know, do you? Just have to keep your fingers crossed.
Let's go for it. Come on, boys. Big game. Let's put in a huge performance, set ourselves up, get ourselves ready, World Cup ready, and we'll be back at half-time to see how we're getting on.
Absolutely. We'll leave you guys with these anthems. That's a pretty comprehensive first half, Dan.
That was just bullying. Anyway, look at it.
66 seconds. I think I think 68 was the current, or 69 was the current England record / Six Nations record in this campaign. I can't speak to previous campaigns. And I believe England have the 3 fastest tries of this championship.
They must do.
All inside a minute and a half.
Mate, that was just... England were awesome. So I am not wearing rose-tinted glasses now. I would rather not have the Grand Slam, but have England's performances and have the team and the way they're playing as England are, than have a Grand Slam and have the Welsh performances.
Oh, 100%. I think in terms of taking it forwards, looking towards the World Cup, and just generally like how you're viewed by the rest of the world, and the kind of, I don't want to say fear, that's the wrong word, but the sort of the intimidation factor of any team that's going to play against you, to string together performances like this week in, week out, albeit with a blip,
a slight,
it sends a message. Speaking of which, and I'm gonna mention this. So I've been chatting with Joe Reed. He's one of the guys that regularly messages us, listens to the pod, and he said. So we were having this debate back and forth on Twitter throughout the last couple of hours, and he really wants us to give Wales some credit for that England loss. Joe, I'm sorry, I can't do it. It's too painful for me to try and credit them with England's loss. I can only come up with rose-tinted excuses. But Dan maybe can do it for you. I'm not sure.
I told you what happened. Dumbledore put a curse on us.
Oh, so it had nothing, you're also saying it had nothing to do with Wales?
Of course not.
Sorry, Joe. I tried. But yeah, look. England have been...
Joe, but in all seriousness, you have a point, just one that would probably be too painful to reiterate. But no, I get where you're coming from. And we were quite nice to Wales today. We
were nice to Wales. We said that they looked like they probably played well, but it was hard to tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Wales. We've done that already. 31-7, is it?
Mate, we are absolutely... I mean...
How angry about that 7?
Not even too much. I think it'll be something to go in at half-time that they can get a bit of a bollocking for.
Given it was a hooker. And it was Farrell and May chasing him down.
Yeah, he went for the tackle too early.
He did. He just mistimed it, and got suckered by the change of direction and cut Farrell out of the equation. But these things happen, and we've talked about it before. In these kinds of games, they get away from you, and it's easy to have little lapses. But as a general rule, I thought England have been unreal. Like some of the hands, like from the guys that you'd half expect it from. Slade's been brilliant. Daly's been brilliant. Jack Nowell's been brilliant. Farrell, all the backs have been great. But Curry, there was one ball that came out. It was pretty nasty ball, and he managed to pick it up pretty much off the floor. It was right round by his ankles, and there's just a little flick of an offload. Sinclair's been good. They've all just been really, really strong, both in terms of their carrying, but also their handling and their offloads. We talked some time ago now, but we talked about how to be the best in the world, you've got to have forwards that have hands like the All Blacks. I don't think there's anyone on the pitch right now for England. Well, not right now; it's half time. But in that first half, who you wouldn't argue has a good pair of hands.
The Sink looks like. I was amazed. I really wanted him to go for the sidestep.
I thought he was going to.
I thought he was going to because he's got good movement.
But I also quite liked the fact that he didn't, and albeit he didn't run through the guy, he did just bulldoze him down. And then obviously the support was there, and instead it was the launch pad in the midfield, cutting the lines and finding the gaps.
It's been brilliant. England have been irresistible. They are playing at such a pace, such a tempo that unfortunately Scotland can't live with it at the moment.
No. I mean, look, we know that Scotland are massively under strength. They've got some huge losses. The whole of their back three is out. We talked about it in previous games. They're missing, in some respects, you could almost put an argument together for an entire first 15 made up of people that are currently unable to play. So that's always going to make life difficult. But you add to that England are being clinical rather than just playing a team that's massively under strength. And they're in trouble. Yeah,
it could be. Well, it's one of those. I hope England do keep the intensity up, but the reality is the game was won within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I hope England can keep the intensity up, but
I think they will. I think they will. I mean, they may not score another 24 points, although we said that against Italy and they did. I think at the moment they're so well drilled that they have that ability to just keep the pressure on. It might become a little bit more loose, but they've got the players to deal with that as well. I mean, already it's starting to look a little bit loose. But with people like Jack Nowell, like what just before half time there, where Elliot Daly got isolated, Jack Nowell first man in. You're thinking there's no way that England are retaining this ball. He's going to get turned over, and Jack Nowell just finds a way to get his hands on the ball, take that couple of extra steps, hold it up long enough for the support to arrive, and then it's recycled and we start again. And it's so important to have players like that. And that, I think, is where Eddie Jones was talking about Jack Nowell as this kind of Seven-esque winger. It's that ability to just have the strength and the presence of mind that you'd get from a back row forward to be able to step in and do things like that.
He reminds me of Lomu.
He does. I mean, watching England, it's a little bit like in the game Lomu, the 2005 game Lomu, when you had the Lomu team.
Sorry,
not 2005, 95, sorry.
It was following that World Cup.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a bold call now. And any listeners out there, Joan Loma Rugby for the younger ones is the best rugby game that's ever been out.
To be fair, they've never made a decent rugby game. Well, no, they have. They made one that we used to play quite a lot.
Yeah, but Lomu was still the best one.
Yeah.
And I am putting this out there now. I am the best Lomu player in the world. I am unbeatable.
Maybe currently, but only because you're the only person still playing it. Because you're the only person that still thinks a PlayStation 2 is the most current piece of tech.
I believe it was the PS1.
I think you might be right. Look, let's not disrespect the sides by moving off topic. What are we looking for from England in the second half? I mean, obviously, let's be honest, the game's won.
The game is won.
That ship has sailed. Do we just want the same? Another 40 minutes of the same? Do we want to get the subs on early? There's not really anyone on the bench. Maybe now's a good time to see the Tio Tuilagi partnership again in the middle. Just give it another go. I feel like Scotland are dealing
want
with
Slade to
Tuilagi at the
stay
moment.
on.
Well, I do too. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And I think he'll just carry on scoring tries or setting up tries for fun. But at this point, does Eddie go, we're going to have a little bit of a break after this. I've now got an opportunity to actually try out a few things.
I wouldn't mind seeing, just to give him a thing, is for Farrell to come off and Ford to go at 10, give him a full half.
Yeah.
And just try and have him.
I think it would
Farrell's
be
done anything wrong.
No, I agree with you. But because Farrell's a known entity and Ford at the moment, unfortunately, because of lack of game time, is a bit of an unknown entity. I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's what I'd quite like. But other than that, yeah, much the same. It's hard to keep.
But maybe
when you've won the
game. Simulate a scenario and say, okay, well, look, let's imagine that we're playing with this squad and we get an injury in our back three. We don't have a back three replacement. What do? Maybe Slade goes back to fullback and you bring Tio on. Maybe, do you know what I mean? Like, maybe Johnny May takes a break because we know what he can do too. And you go, okay, what do we do in that situation?
Yeah, without being silly, it'd be quite good to try out, perhaps, like you say, to maybe have a look at different options. Not necessarily as possibilities of starting, but should, like you say, the worst happen, should there be a couple of...
Either that or take Manu and Billy off so that they don't get injured.
Put Billy in the centres.
just do a swap. Have the forwards in the backs in the forwards. We're taking the piss. We should stop. We can take the piss at the end when the result's secure.
Yeah, no.
I do want to see. I definitely think he needs to give George Ford a bit more time under the circumstances and just prove that he does have faith in his bench. But yeah, really strong half. Exactly what we wanted to see, and sending a real message. And I think, despite the way that the table has the teams, I think England are without question the strongest team in this year's Six Nations.
I couldn't agree more, young man.
Right, guys.
Let's get back to it.
Let's get back, watch the second half, and we will come back and talk to you all about it at the end. Dan, it may seem a while ago to you and I, but to our listeners, it was about 40 seconds ago that I said, England, without question, are the strongest team in this year's Six Nations. Comment.
What the hell? Oh, mate, do you know what? I normally really enjoy doing this pod. There's no part of the next few minutes I'm going to enjoy.
I've tweeted a few people this evening, a few of our listeners who regularly reach out on Twitter, just saying, not really looking forward to how we go about rose tinting this one, but we will strive to deliver because that is what we're here to do. So let's... It
is, but we also we got to we've got to have a level of that.
Yeah, we shoot them down and then we justify it.
Yeah,
let's start with the shooting.
Mate, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much energy I have left. So there are a few things. I've been a massive Elliot Daly fan. He is responsible for 2 of the tries, 2 very bread and butter fullback tackles he didn't make.
Yep.
But not that, should have stopped tries.
Is that a worry as our World Cup fullback?
Yeah, it is a worry, and that needs to be dealt with.
Come on, we're about committing. What when you say it needs to be dealt with, do you believe that Elliot Daly is therefore the wrong man for the fullback?
No, I still believe he can do the job, and I still believe what he offers in attack is so great. I just think there needs to be work on his defence. The way, and don't get me wrong, to any of our Scottish listeners, any moaning, I am not taking away anything from Scotland. Scotland's second half performance was heroic, and I'm in no way taking away anything from...
You think about how kind of impressive England were in that first half, and everything we said at half time, we genuinely meant it at half time. You can almost say the same things of Scotland in the second half. I mean, it was a complete role reversal. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think, and I this is where I think our biggest problem is. I think we're mentally still a bit weak.
Well, Owen Farrell was interviewed and said, England have more control than they think they do. In other words, they kind of tend to freak out a little bit, and they don't think they're controlling the game when actually they are, and as a result, they get themselves on the back foot. They lose their momentum, and they lose the control that they have actually got. Eddie said we were seduced by the scoreboard, and interestingly, he said he kind of started off by saying, he was obviously asked the difficult questions, and he kind of started off by saying, we need to look into this and we need to find out what's wrong, and it takes time, but there is enough time. We've obviously got World Cup preparation. That's what that's for. And then he kind of got a bit more confident and followed it up with, we know what the problem is and we need to sort it out, but it's going to take time. He didn't go into details about what exactly that is. Perhaps he's questioning certain people.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of take it for granted. So one of my issues we have is that has now happened where we 3 times in very recent memory, we have been in a position where we never should have lost. Against South Africa, when we scored like 24 points in the first 10 minutes.
Yep. And
then by half time, we were going in. Against Wales at half time, there's no way we should have given up that lead. And today did take us being ridiculous and Scotland being immense, but that's now 3 times that's happened.
Yeah.
And my God, that's a worry.
I mean, these were the exact examples that were given when Eddie Jones was questioned. Johnny Wilkinson made a very interesting comment, and he said, look, rugby doesn't always need to be sexy to be good, and game management is so key. And this is, Joe Reid asked us to compliment Wales, and this is a good example and somewhere where I can do that. Wales are excellent at game management. At half time, they went in, they were 16 points up. Earlier in the Six Nations, that would have been a record comeback. Obviously, that's changed today. And they had to come up with a game plan. And when they came out in that second half, it felt like they were controlling the game. They weren't thinking, right, we need to come out and score 4 more tries. They were thinking, how do you put a game to bed that you're leading by 16 points? You keep the ball a little tighter, you take drop goals, you take your points when you get them. And it's not about, in England's case, it almost feels like, we're 30 points up, therefore, if we get a penalty in range, we shouldn't take it, we should kick for the corner because we're so far ahead, we should just keep piling on the pressure. And actually what Johnny was saying is, if you're that far ahead and the game is essentially won, waste time. It may not be the sexiest rugby, but that's how you win World Cups. You say, look, we've done the hard work. Now we need to control the game and own that lead. And England, I think, in all of these games, like you say, very fast starts and then a lack of control in the second half. They need a kind of a game plan whereby they say, what does the second half look like? What is the plan? What does the first 10 minutes of that second half look like? Who's responsible for it? What's everyone's job? And that was Ian McGeechan who was saying that. That's not my words, but it's absolutely right. And we're assuming that they didn't have that conversation at half time, of course. But that's the conversation you need to be having if you're talking about World Cups, isn't it? Especially once you get to things like knockout. It doesn't matter how far ahead you are. I mean, maybe that's the lesson to take from this. Is look, it doesn't matter how pretty the first half lead might look like. It's not over until 80 minutes until the final whistle goes. And it's not about saying, we've scored 4, therefore in the first half, therefore we've got to score 4 in the second half or whatever. It's about saying, how do we make sure that the opposition don't get a comeback and we continue to tick the scoreboard over at the same time?
Yeah, mate, I couldn't agree more with that. I genuinely haven't seen the post-match interview, so if I am repeating, it is.
Don't worry, you haven't really.
But first 10 minutes, shove the ball up your shirt, slow it down, just take it, and then suddenly they've only got half an hour to do. Don't try and be clever. Don't try and be the big man. It to me, it shows a real immaturity. I don't think there's enough leaders in that group, and I think people need to stand up. And it's all very well putting it all on Owen Farrell, but other people need to stand up. Like when you look at 2003, when you had the likes of Delalio, you had the likes of Will Greenwood.
who would also stand up. So I think some of the more senior players now need to stand up and say, no, what are we doing? Come on. This is still international rugby. I don't care if we're 50 points up. We haven't won till the final whistle.
Yeah. And you know, despite what we said in the first half, it's not about saying, right, now we need to score the same number of points again, particularly if you get a bit of a whirlwind start. It's about managing the full 80 to end up with a win. You know, worry about the scoreline when you're having to play for a points difference, not when points difference is kind of not a factor. And it's something that in all three of the games you mentioned, England failed to do. It was really kind of control the start of the second half, you know, in a way that made sure that they were, you know, still able to create the momentum when they wanted to. I mean, you look at the last 5 minutes of that game, 7 minutes maybe. You know, it took a little while, and England eventually got over the line and salvaged something from the game. But where was that for the previous 30 minutes, the 35 minutes?
Yeah, it was, mate. It was wonderful. So actually, to go back to Wales, when they've already won the game, and they definitely had won the game, their defence was still full on.
Rock solid defence, putting the ball like into gaps, forced the opposition to turn around and chase the ball. You know, force them back. You know, kick deep. England, it was all constantly attacking, and it didn't need to be. I think that for me is one of the takes from this game. You know, it felt like we were trying to attack too much in the second half, when actually being a little bit more defensive was the smart play.
Is it a worry again, similar to the Wales game, where we don't have much of we can't adapt on the pitch as well as we should be able to?
It's very hard to say. We've got the players. I mean, you know, you're asking them to do almost the easier job better, because they're doing the harder job well. Yeah, we know.
We've got the talent, no doubt.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know where the inability to do this comes from. I don't know whether it's just that as individuals that hasn't been drilled in, or I don't know if they've got a game plan that, you know, clearly hasn't worked, and therefore it's the management's responsibility. I genuinely believe that they'll work it out, and I think the next few games are going to be very interesting. The build up games, but it's definitely where we were sort of, you know. I said to you before the game, if England were to lose today, it would look like a fairly average Six Nations. If they were to win, because of the quality of the previous wins, it would look like a really good Six Nations. And at the end of the first half, it looked like they delivered exactly that. And now it feels like it's been an average one. I know we've still come second, I think, but
yeah, I haven't seen the table, but I would say
it must be. We must be second, because Ireland have lost 2, didn't they? And we've lost 1.5.
But it was, yeah, mate. Let's rewatch the match, and then during the week let's go into detail. Because right now I'm still
fuming.
I don't know if I'm angry or if I'm exhausted, or I don't know what I am.
Quick bit of rose tinted something to give the listeners, the fans, some hope.
This will make us a better team for the World Cup. This is a lesson I think we needed to learn, and we've now learned it twice, probably against Wales and Scotland. I think this will make us a better team for the World Cup.
Know what needs to be done. I mean, I really hope that. I think that, you know, what Eddie said about we know what the problem is, but we need to sort it out. I just really hope that is true, and I believe it is. I genuinely believe that, you know, what we see in this team, you know, the positives that we see in this team are so positive that I just can't see it going any other way other than up. But yeah, really, really disappointing today. To the point where the last 10 minutes or so, prior to the last 5 minutes, I didn't really want to watch it anymore.
No, mate, I was the same. And then, I mean, well done, guys, for actually getting that draw. Oh. You know, when you went home, well done for doing that. But
that also shows that this is a massive lesson. We need to learn from it. I think we will, and I think it'll make us better and stronger for the World Cup.
Absolutely. Right. Well, yeah. As Dan says, we will we'll digest. You'll no doubt do the same. Get in touch with us. Let us know what you thought. If you've got anything rose tinted, you can share with us to cheer us up a little bit. That would be great. But whatever you think, get in touch. Let us know. Email is englandrugbypod@gmail.com, or you can get in touch with us on any of the social media platforms @englandrugbypod. And of course, rate us, review us on iTunes. Let us know what you think. And yeah, just continue to join in the conversation, and hopefully we'll have some good content for you over the coming months as we build up towards the World Cup. Prior to those summer games, if you've got any ideas for those, we've obviously been given a few. It'd be great to hear about those too. And we will be back next week with a bit of a sort of Six Nations roundup. We'll look a little bit more in depth at this game and do a bit of a roundup of the Six Nations.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, we will catch you next time. Thanks so much for listening.